After the operation, tests showed there was cancer present.
It felt like it was a real shock.
I've never encountered anybody remotely like Kate.
The surgery was successful. However, tests after the operation found cancer had been present.
I cannot tell you what a relief it is to have finally completed my chemotherapy treatment.
To protect the children. That has been the focus of the Prince and Princess of Wales in recent weeks. It is why...
Although I have finished chemotherapy, my path to healing and full recovery is long.
Yeah, I think stuff to do with family overwhelms me quite a bit.
You know, you put on sort of brave-faced stoicism through treatment.
Progress, she said, but as anyone going through chemotherapy will know, there are good days and bad days.
I'm very, very proud. She's been amazing. She's been through so much in the last couple of years, particularly.
So she arrives in Italy for her first solo trip abroad since her cancer diagnosis.
She's an amazing mum and an amazing wife, and literally our family couldn't cope without her. So she's been absolutely stunning, really.
You maybe think to yourself, it won't happen to us. We'll be okay.
It was just after 8 in the morning on May 22nd, 2026. A foggy Friday on the Isles of Scilly. Prince William sat in a small cafe with 2 radio presenters, a cup of builder's tea in front of him, live on national radio for the first time in his life. He had come to talk about a hospital wing, about housing, the safe, scheduled things. And then Amanda Holden mentioned Catherine, and the future King of England said something no palace aide had drafted, no press office had approved, and no one listening had expected. He said his family couldn't cope without her. Not, she's doing well. Not, we're managing. Couldn't cope. 6 words that told the world more about this marriage than a decade of official photographs ever could. If you want more deep dives like this, make sure to subscribe to Royal Archives. Speaking live on Heart Breakfast, William's exact words were these: "She's an amazing mum, an amazing wife, and literally our family couldn't cope without her."
She's an amazing mum and an amazing wife, and literally our family couldn't cope without her. So she's been absolutely stunning, really.
He added that she had been absolutely stunning. Brilliant. There was no script in his hands. The presenters hadn't pushed him. Holden had simply congratulated Catherine on her recent trip to Italy, and William, a man trained from childhood to give nothing away, gave everything away in a single sentence. The Royal Reserve, the famous protective wall around private feeling, came down on live radio between the weather and the travel news. To understand why that morning mattered, you have to understand where it sat in the story of the past 2 years. In March 2024, Catherine, Princess of Wales, told the world she had been diagnosed with cancer following abdominal surgery. She was 42. She spent the months that followed undergoing preventative chemotherapy, away from public view, while the country waited and worried. In September 2024, she announced her treatment was complete. In January 2025 came the word every family prays for: remission. And through all of it, William said almost nothing. He gave one glimpse, speaking to reporters in Cape Town in late 2024, when he called that year probably the hardest of his life. Brutal was the word he used. Then the wall went back up. So when he agreed to join Heart Breakfast from the Isles of Scilly, the first live national radio broadcast ever made from those islands, nobody expected the wall to move. He was there for duty, to open a new hospital wing, to tour affordable housing backed by the Duchy of Cornwall, a morning of ribbon cutting, in theory. The radio appearance was meant to be light. It became something else entirely. What happened over those 40 minutes was a portrait of devotion, painted one unguarded detail at a time. Holden asked how he felt about Catherine's trip to Reggio Emilia in northern Italy, her first overseas engagement since the diagnosis, a 2-day visit built around her work on early childhood development. William didn't pause. So proud, he said, very, very proud. And then he kept going, further than he needed to, further than royals usually do. She had been through so much in the last couple of years, he said. She had been looking forward to Italy for a long time. And when she came home, this is the detail that stopped listeners mid-commute, she came back buzzing, not drained, not relieved it was over. Buzzing. The Italy visit itself explains why. Reggio Emilia is home to an internationally studied approach to early childhood education, the field Catherine has made her life's work through her foundation's Center for Early Childhood. This was not a wave and smile tour. She went to learn, to observe classrooms, to sit with educators whose methods she has followed for years. Crowds lined the streets for hours to see her, and she met them looking, by every account, like a woman fully restored to the work she was made for. A woman who 18 months earlier was fighting for her health returned from the world stage with more energy than she left with. William described how seriously she takes that work too, the research, the reading. He joked that most evenings he has to fight his way past stacks of paperwork on her side of the bedroom, documents about early years education, lined up and waiting. The image is almost comically ordinary. The future queen in bed with her homework, the future king climbing over it, but it told the audience something the palace never says out loud. Catherine does not perform this role. She works it. And here is the layer most listeners never heard, the deeper story behind those 6 words. Royal author Russell Myers, who has reported on the Wales family for years and published a book on their marriage, William and Catherine. The intimate inside story had already documented what the diagnosis did to William privately. In the book's reporting, relayed afterwards by Woman and Home, a close friend of the couple described Catherine as William's whole world and said that when the diagnosis came, it felt to him as if the ground beneath him had vanished. Heartbreak, fear, and helplessness, all at once. That is the private context behind the public sentence. When William said his family couldn't cope without Catherine, he wasn't reaching for a compliment. He was describing something he had genuinely faced, the real possibility of life without her at the center of it. Those present in the cafe that morning noticed how naturally it came out. There was no swallow, no glance at an aide, just a husband answering honestly because, for once, the question found him before the training did. Months earlier, almost no one would have predicted this version of William. But the moment carried an echo that older viewers caught immediately, and it reaches back nearly 3 decades. In November 1997, at her golden wedding anniversary, the Queen stood before guests at Banqueting House and paid tribute to Prince Philip in words that became part of royal history. "He has, quite simply, been my strength and stay all these years," she said. It was the most personal sentence she ever spoke in public, a monarch admitting in her own controlled way that the crown is carried by 2 people, not 1. 29 years later, her grandson sat in a cafe on the Isles of Scilly and said the same thing in his own generation's language. Couldn't cope without her. Strength and stay. Different words. The exact same confession. The Queen never lived to hear William say it. She died in September 2022, before any of this chapter began. But she had watched the marriage form. She had invited Catherine into the family's most private rhythms years before the wedding. Royal commentator Richard Kay, speaking in the Channel 5 documentary, Kate and the Queen. A special relationship described how the Queen grew to trust Catherine over time. A bond built quietly, away from cameras, in afternoon conversations and small acts of guidance. The Queen saw in Catherine the same qualities she had spent a lifetime relying on in Philip. Steadiness, patience, the willingness to put the other person first when it mattered most. The Queen's tribute to Philip was the model of what a royal partnership could be. On that foggy Friday morning, William showed the world he had inherited it. What does this mean for the monarchy itself? More than a warm headline. The institution William will one day lead has always depended on partnerships the public rarely sees clearly. The Queen had Philip for 73 years. William, by his own admission, has Catherine. And the past 2 years tested that partnership in the hardest way a family can be tested. The interview also revealed how the couple is managing her return. William was honest about the cost of overseas work. "Trips like Italy take a great deal out of you," he explained, "because you're permanently switched on, receiving and giving the whole time. So they balance it. They make sure she is rested, make sure she is okay." Her health comes before the schedule. A quiet reversal of a century of royal habit. where duty traditionally came before everything. And the household behind that decision sounds refreshingly normal. William let slip that mornings at home are chaos like anyone's. Jam sandwiches eaten in the car, fingerprints on the seats, courtesy of 8-year-old Prince Louis, a father on live radio telling Charlotte and Louis, if they were listening on the school run, to stop fighting over the speakers and get to class on time. Britain heard a future king that morning. It also heard a dad. Even the interview's lighter edges worked in his favor. William admitted he is definitely not a morning person. He apologized for sounding a bit hoarse. The result, he confessed, of celebrating Aston Villa's European trophy win in Istanbul days earlier, the club's first in 44 years. None of it was polished. All of it was human. And that, more than any rebranding effort, is how a 1,000-year-old institution stays alive in 2026. Not by guarding its mystery, but by letting the country see that the family at its center is, in the ways that matter, a family like theirs. But the sentence is the thing. Strip away the charm of the school-run stories and return to those 6 words because they carry more weight than any speech William has ever given. Couldn't cope without her. Consider who said it. The heir to the throne. The one person in Britain whose entire upbringing was an education in never revealing dependence on anyone. And consider what he attached it to. Not the institution, not the firm, his family. He placed Catherine at the absolute center of everything that holds his life together, and he did it without hesitation, on Lev National Radio, with millions listening. Even the smallest word in the sentence carries weight. Literally, he said. Our family literally couldn't cope without her. People reach for that word when a plain statement doesn't feel strong enough, when they need the listener to understand they are not exaggerating, not performing, not being polite. William wasn't describing affection. He was stating a fact about how his family survives. The public reaction was immediate and almost universally moved. Across social media, listeners shared the clip with the same observation repeated over and over, and that this was the most openly emotional the future king had ever allowed himself to be about his wife. Reader's Digest noted fans flooding the broadcast's comments to praise the couple's bond, with one widely shared reply calling the marriage proof that choosing the right person changes everything. Holden herself seemed briefly caught off guard. The interview had been booked for laughs and light conversation. It produced instead the defining public statement of William and Catherine's marriage. The dark chapter, by every visible sign, is closing. Catherine is edging back into the work she loves, on her own terms and at her own pace. Italy is done. More trips will follow, carefully spaced, carefully balanced, and William, the boy who learned too young what it means to lose the woman at the center of a family, has made it plain that he intends never to learn that lesson again. He will protect her rest the way the institution once protected its image. What remains unwritten is everything ahead of them. The pace of Catherine's full return, the throne that waits for them both, and whether the openness William showed on that foggy morning in the Isles of Scilly becomes the voice of his future reign. One sentence suggests it might. Because the next time someone tells you the royals never show their hearts, remember the morning a future king sat in a small cafe, live on the radio, and told the whole country that without Catherine, his family simply couldn't cope. If you want the real stories behind the monarchy's most private moments, subscribe to Royal Archives, because what William said that morning is only the beginning of this next chapter, and we'll be following every step of it.